Democrats in Congress want an open border. They caused this problem. And that, quite honestly, was the fatal flaw in McConnell's decision to negotiate in secret with people who are negotiating in good faith. So you need a president who wants to do this, or we would need at least 60 votes in the Senate to pass bills that would force a president to secure the border. I mean, the whole problem with that negotiation was that it actually limited a future president's ability to secure the border. I mean, I can go into detail on that, but I mean, the bill that was negotiated by McConnell, I know he had Langford do it, but McConnell was the mastermind. That bill actually weakened a president's authority, which is why it was worse than doing nothing.
Why, when it was obvious to everybody, I think Speaker Johnson listed 60-some presidential orders that were overturned by Biden and allowed this border to be open. Given that fact, and given the fact that Donald Trump did not really request new authorization, legal authorization, or even a lot of new monies, why did the Republicans fall for this last-minute Hail Mary that we need new laws or we need new money when all you had to do was close the border with the resources that we had? It was doable. What was the logic behind the Senate leadership that thought that, was it to help the Democrats? Was it, that was baffling to me as it was the open border. What was the intent behind it? They want open borders for corporate ag or what?
So first of all, it wasn't Republicans that fell for it. It was McConnell.
Yes.
And a couple of his loyalists. Again, McConnell's top priority was Ukraine. You know, we knew that when he wanted to attach $6 billion of Ukraine funding to one of the original CRs. And the House, that wasn't going to pass through the House. So in the end, Republicans forced McConnell, and we forced him to actually vote against that bill that he was proposing. You know, we denied cloture on that bill. And so the CR was passed without $6 billion worth of Ukraine funding. But I think, and I don't know who made the first connection, but it was a brilliant political point that we ought to secure our own border before we spend money to help any nation secure its border. And that obviously applied to Ukraine. So no matter where you fell on the spectrum in terms of support for Ukraine, the top priority should have been to secure our own border. And so late in the year, October, November, McConnell was forced and pressured into, basically agreeing with that position. And so he recommended we deny cloture on the first supplemental military funding bill. Now, I didn't think he was serious about it. I figured he was going to go through some kind of charade. But again, Republicans denied cloture on that bill. Schumer and McConnell wanted to rush a negotiation through and pass it before Christmas. I led the effort to call a Republican conference committee meeting in January. And so that pretty well killed the rush to pass a border bill and Ukraine funding prior to Christmas. Again, they always like using those deadlines. The end result of that was McConnell went into seat negotiations. They were complex. I think Schumer probably was pretty truthful when he talked to Politico afterwards and said that we were playing chess, McConnell's playing checkers, and we are in a far better position on the border than we were 3 weeks ago. I mean, basically, the Democrats were negotiating for political cover.
Yeah.
And McConnell gave it to them. What we were asking for, we never asked for an immigration bill. What we were saying repeatedly in conference, and actually, as John Hoeven made this point first, he said, listen, we can't trust Biden to follow through on any agreement we make. We need some kind of forcing mechanism. So I seized on that, and what I suggested was make Ukraine funding contingent on actually securing the border. Put out metrics. And I've come from business. There's all kinds of performance metrics you apply to business. So, they wanted $60 billion over 12 months, give them $5 billion a month if they start securing the border. That's all we asked for, a forcing mechanism, because he has the authority. Again, if there was some strengthening of authority, we'd have been happy to do that. But we weren't asking for an immigration bill. And the secret negotiations allowed McConnell to work behind the scenes, not tell anybody what was happening. We would ask Langford, we would ask McConnell, well, negotiations are so complex, it's too detailed, I can't get into the details. So we only found out about the week before we finally got the language. The elements sounded pretty concerning at that point in time. And when they finally dropped the bill is actually worse than what was being leaked. And let me just tell you exactly why it was worse than doing nothing. The 5,000 threshold was bad enough. Okay, 5,000 threshold. Then it was mandatory for the president to stop, processing asylum claims. Shut down the border, send them home. Well, at 4,000, it became discretionary. So what that would imply, remember, the Supreme Court said current law exudes deference. If all of a sudden you're codifying the fact that the president doesn't have the discretion until we average 4,000 immigrants a day over 7 days to stop processing asylum claims, you're reducing that power. And then even worse, that authority would only exist for 3 years based on that bill. So all of a sudden, Congress is stepping into it and saying that the president, by saying the president or codifying the president having authority to secure the border or to shut down or stop processing asylum claims, he didn't have authority to begin with, is what you're saying in codifying that. So that's why it was worse than doing nothing. That was very few people talked about that. But from my standpoint, that was the worst part of that bill.
Well, politically, as we went from 2 to 4 to 5 to 6, you could see the issue climb up in the polls from the fourth most important in the minds of voters to third to second. And then some polls, it was the most important. And then obviously it became, when you looked at the actual polling, it was 70-30 against the present open border. So Biden, it seems like he lured the Republican majority leader and hoping that he would be followed for the Republicans then to meet the demands of what was essentially, as you pointed out, still an open border. And then when they found they could no longer do that or they were being ambushed, then the whole deal would collapse and they'd say that you own the border now. In fact, that's what Van Jones and people on MSNBC and CNN said. Well, the Republicans had a chance to close it. They collapsed. They own it now. It's
the reason many of us are so outspoken now about what McConnell did is a complete breach of what we were talking about in the conference. He didn't get lured into this. This was his game plan. He masterminded this. Okay.
So
we weren't duped. We weren't lured into this thing. All we were asking for was a forcing mechanism to force Biden to secure the border and use his desire for Ukraine funding to leverage to secure the border. McConnell does these secret negotiations with people that want an open border, that were just looking for political cover, and he gave it to them.
Do you think he wanted an open border?
Dropping that Schumer, in that quote to Politico, basically admitted, yeah, we were playing chess, he was playing checkers, and now we're in great shape on the border. I mean, how stupid.
Was the open border actually something he would prefer? Was his view on the border, if you take Ukraine out of the equation, was it any different than the Democrat?
I think his top priority was getting Ukraine funding any way he could do it. He realized that unless he did something token on the border, and he also realized the Democrats weren't going to be serious about actually securing the border, so it was going to be a difficult negotiation. So you have to do it in public. I mean, you can't do this behind closed doors. So again, I can't explain, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say the stupidity of McConnell in doing this. It was just utterly stupid what he did. And the result, again, I can't imagine a leader of a party in the Senate giving political cover like McConnell gave to the Democrats. Has it ever happened in history before? This is a winning issue. I've been here for 13 years. There's never been an issue in which the American public is on the side of the Republicans than on the border. And McConnell pretty well frittered that all away. Now, our only savior here might be in the House, if they can stand strong and continue to use that leverage for Ukraine funding.
I'm Victor Davis Hanson, and I have the pleasure of having the senior senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. Ron, is Mitch McConnell, is he the leader that if the Republicans have a renaissance, is he going to be part of the implementation of or is he going to be an obstructionist? Or after I saw what he did on the border, and we've talked about that, where does his support within the Senate come? Is it his expertise in getting judicial appointments, or what is it? Because he doesn't seem that he's very fond of the likely Republican nominee. He's had wars with him in the past. This debacle about the border in Ukraine. Why can't people, or what's the source of support in the country? Or I just looked before we came on tonight of major leaders, Biden, Trump, Ron Johnson. He polls the lowest of all major political figures in the United States. It's about 28%. What's his source of support? Is it just the powers of the office that he holds?
I think it's what he reminds us about all the time in the Senate is he raises hundreds of millions of dollars to reelect Republican senators.
Yeah.
I mean, during the Ukraine debate, once a week, 2 weeks in a row, he mentioned colleagues. Just let me remind you how much the Senate Leadership Fund is raising to reelect our colleagues here and gain the majority. I was part of the effort to replace him this Congress. Rick Scott agreed to challenge him by running for office. In my nomination speech of Rick Scott, I laid out the case against McConnell. I said, it's, you got somebody like Rick Scott, a business-like approach. Somebody knows how to get something done versus McConnell, business as usual. I point to the fact that McConnell became leader in 2007. Our debt was under $10 trillion. Now our debt is $35 trillion. And there's been one constant in all that time. There's been one person in every negotiation under debt ceiling, appropriations budget, and that's been Mitch McConnell, as our debt has more than tripled since he's become leader. He's and then again, for me, the final straw was the secret negotiation that provided Democrats wonderful political cover. I mean, you couldn't design a larger debacle than this. And then what he did, and this was even worse, when they dropped that bill on a Sunday, and yeah, we were criticizing, but we didn't kill the bill. The bill killed itself. Within a day, he's changing his tune, saying, well, the politics have changed. We have a presidential candidate now. He doesn't like this bill, so I'm going to suggest we all vote against it. All he was doing there was trying to deflect the blame off of his awful bill. It wasn't Langford the negotiator. I mean, it might have been the negotiator. Murphy said, no, McConnell's staff was in the room. He wrote the bill. So rather than owning up to it and say, yeah, I blew this. This is an awful bill. The public's not accepting it. He's blaming Trump. He's saying this is a great bill. The border union supports it. Well, the border unions support anything that bring the numbers down. And these people are drowning.
You think
McConnell
that
still plays the bill, but blaming Trump, and then now he's going to blame conservatives in the Senate and House conservatives. Not blame McConnell for this debacle. He's going to blame everybody else.
But do you think, because that's one of the greatest humiliations I've seen in his entire senatorial career, do you think that made an impression on reluctant supporters who voted with him out of fear last time? Or will you think there's going to be a change of mind?
I sure hope so. They should look at Speaker Johnson, who's doing a lot of good fundraising like McCarthy did. So anybody who's in that position is going to be able to raise funds.
Yes.
They may not take as much joy out of it as McConnell does, but anybody in that position can tap into the people who want to support conservatism. Okay? But no, I mean, obviously there will be another challenge if next time there's going to be a vote. I hope their vote comes sooner rather than later.